everyone, it's me back for a brand new video, and this week for the interview is also another Schnorr legend, and he can really tell a story. He used to be a goalkeeper and played over 200 games for Schnorr. It is John Taylor. Talk me through your early years of being a footballer.
Thank you, Ryan, for inviting me to take part in your question and answering session. Sport, and football in particular, has been a big part of my life, and it all started in the playground of Newton Park Primary School in Ayr. Every playtime I went out to the playground and was kicking a ball about and doing this and doing that, and I started to catch the ball sometimes, and became really keen to try and be a goalkeeper. And that's how it started, and eventually I got into Newton Park primary school team. After that I got into Ayr Select, which was all the schools in Ayr and district. They had a select and they played all over the country, and eventually we managed to get to the final of the Scottish, and having beaten East Ayrshire, Aberdeenshire, Glasgow South, we had to play Lanarkshire, and it was a two-legged affair. First leg was at Somerset Park in Ayr. We won 4-0, and of course, as boys as we were then, were very confident, probably arrogant, thought the job was done, and went up to Douglas Park and promptly were beaten 6-0. So that was a huge learning curve for me, not to take anything for granted, and hopefully it stood me in good stead for that. Once I left Newton Park, I went to rugby school. I went to Ayr Academy, and there was no football. You were not allowed to play football. Football was frowned upon. And I did play rugby, although you wouldn't get me into the scrum. But I wasn't too bad at kicking the ball. I wasn't too bad at catching the ball. And that was my job. And we were quite successful. In fact, we were very successful, winning every game apart from one, which was at Hamilton. A couple of the players, Gordon Strachan in particular, went on to play for Scotland. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. But football was for me. That was my chosen sport, and as I say, it was really frowned upon. And eventually I was asked to join a football club, a boys' club called Ayr Albion. They've produced many an internationalist. Ian Dewar is the one that sticks out to me, and I'll talk about him in a minute or two. But I joined Ayr Albion, and I remember the team: Taylor, Gilliland and Hogg, Mann, Graham McIntyre, Muchman, Crieff, Kerr, Mitchell and Lendrum. The manager was Robert Alexander, and I have an awful lot of thanks for him, because he was the one that set me in the road to football. Ayr Albion were a great club. They really brought up the boys well. We went to training, we had to go to training, and the discipline was there. And with my background at Ayr Academy and the rugby, it was certainly a pleasure to play football in the afternoon after playing rugby in the morning. I had to make a decision because people were asking me as to what I was going to be doing in the future of my football. I thought about Ayr United, obviously, because they were my hometown senior team. I was asked to sign for them through my dad, and I won't go into too many details, but put it this way, my dad was against me signing for Ayr United, so I never. Ian Dewar, I mentioned earlier on. Well, he and I met after a game when I was playing for Ayr Albion against Irvine Meadow, playing at Irvine Meadow rather, and he suggested that he would recommend I would go to Hampden. So upon arriving at Hampden and seeing the facilities and seeing this and seeing that, that's exactly where I ended up. Not before I'd had a bit of a fallout with my school. When I was signing for Queen's Park, they obviously told me that I'd have to come up to Hampden for training, and I was at school, and I went to the headmaster at Ayr Academy, and I asked if I could get 5 minutes away early from school to run to the station at Ayr and get the train to Glasgow. And he and he said to me, "Well, why are you going to Glasgow?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to train. I'm going to." And he said, "Going to do what?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to Queen's Park, football." And he said, "No, you're not getting 5 minutes off." And I thought, this is very, very strange, really. And I do know that, and it wasn't their fault, there were pals of mine, schoolmates of mine, classmates of mine who played rugby. And if they wanted 5 minutes off, 5 hours off to play their game of rugby, they would be allowed to do that. And I think that was wrong, and I know my father was very upset and angry about that. And that was something that I really hope that people can play any sport of their choice. So that's early days, Ryan. I'm sure you've got other questions to ask me, and I look forward to those.
You started off your senior career at Queen's Park, playing over 100 games for the club. Talk me through your memories from this time.
I spent 9 years at Hampden, at Queen's Park, Ryan. As I said earlier on, when I arrived at Hampden for the first time and went inside and saw the stadium, looked around the place, obviously I fell in love with Hampden. And I've got great memories, happy memories. Sad, sometimes disappointing, frustrating, but in the whole, really enjoyed my time at Hampden. It started off playing for the Victoria 11, which is the under-18 team, under a guy called Bert Cromer, who was an ex-Queen's Park player, and he was the one who got me involved more as far as the football side was concerned, getting to know my teammates better, and just showing me around the stadium and how big it was. And the goalkeeper in the first team at that time was Bobby Clark. Bobby Clark left Queen's Park with the manager at that time, Eddie Turnbull, to go to Aberdeen. And his history shows that he eventually got into the Scottish team, Bobby. And Bobby now and I still keep in touch. He's over in America. Now, when I played with the Victoria 11, then I went into the second team, the Strollers, Queen's Park Strollers. And then I made my debut for Queen's Park against Dumbarton, believe it or not. As you possibly will ask later on, I had a spell at Dumbarton. So I had a lovely time playing. It was purely amateur, Ryan. There was no money at all if you got your travelling expenses. But if they were, say for example, 99p, you wouldn't get £1. You would have to give the penny back. So they were strict, and this was something to have an effect in me later on when I was asked to join in the Olympic pre-qualification tour with a lot of the other amateur, inverted commas, amateur players within the UK. When playing for Queen's Park, Harry Davis, ex-Rangers player, he was my first coach, and he was a great influence in me. Tremendous character, what he had gone through in the Korean War. He was just an unbelievable, strong but fair person. And when you're at Queen's Park and you're playing in the first team, you're normally picked to play for the Scottish amateur side. The vast majority of the team comprised of Queen's Parkers. And I was lucky enough to win several caps. I think the highlight was when we managed to qualify for the European semi-final. And obviously if you win the semi-final, you went into the final. Now they were held in Palma, Mallorca. And of course, we all were really looking forward to this. The SFA, Ernie Walker, he was the top man then, hard again, but fair. The SFA provided us with fantastic suits. We were dressed with the SFA badge and all sorts of things, and we were as proud as punch to represent our country. I'll come back to that about the suits in a minute or two, but certainly when I think back, the Friday night, which was the semi-final, was really a highlight for me because we played against Spain in front of, there must have been 10, 12, 15,000 Scots fans there enjoying their holidays, and to be honest, it was a fantastic atmosphere. I had one of my better games, and we managed to beat the Spanish, who were favourites to win the tournament, odds-on favourites. We beat them 2-1 on the Friday night, which meant we got into the final, which was on the Sunday, and this was against Austria. And although I played quite well on the Friday, Sunday wasn't the best, and unfortunately we lost 2-1, and I was very unhappy with my performance. I felt I'd let the side down, but no, we lost, but the experience was really good, and a lot of happy memories for that particular tournament. Now, prior to that, Queen's Park had taken us on tours for the last every year we went on tour. We went to Sierra Leone, we went to Nigeria, Spain, Iceland, Sweden, Japan. That was Middlesex Wanderers, which I'll come to in a second or two. So all over the world, in places I never dreamt of being able to go. So although it was amateur, you were treated like professionals, and the best of hotels, and etc, etc. So that was great. But what I was saying about the Queen's Park tours, there used to be the committee, members of the committee were part of a delegation, and we being players, we got up to all our pranks, and of course, you know, you took the lights out the sockets in the bedrooms of the committee men, you might shove the cupboard or whatever against the door so they couldn't get in, all this sort of thing, and it was good fun, and they had to take it, but they weren't daft. So we were playing in Palma, as I say, in the final, and we lost the final. After the game, we were told by Harry Davis, he said, look, well done lads, tomorrow morning you've got the morning off, but you've got to be back for a certain time because we've got to fly home to Scotland in the afternoon, which was fine. So he said the only condition is in the morning I want all your gear, everything, to be taken from your room and put in a separate big room, an individual room with all the gear there and whatever, and away you go and come and go to the beach. So we left, and the committee who were at the various Queen's Park tours were also in the SFA committee, and they were invited and were part of the delegation. So I remember that I remember we were just leaving to go to the beach, having put our gear in this particular big room, and they kind of nodded to and whatever, and were very, very friendly, and I thought, well, there's something not quite right here. So we went to the beach. Harry said, right lads, back to the hotel, get your gear because the bus leaves in 20 minutes. So we went into the room, and of course my gear was in a particular place where I left it, the suit on the peg, blah blah blah. Tried the jacket on, there was no way it was going to fit me because it wasn't mine. And Neely Hopper was a great wee character, 5'8", 5'9", tried to put his jacket on. I think it was mine, because the arms and the things were right down over his hands, and his trousers were, honestly, it was pandemonium. Harry shout, come on lads, the bus leaving in 10 minutes. So honestly, we had to leave, we had to get the bus to the airport, get on the plane, fly to Glasgow in this gear, which was not our gear. So this is straight, what's going on? So we went down into the reception to get out to the bus, and there's the committee with their gin and tonics, with a big, big smile, and they kind of said, everything all right, lads? And of course, then it struck. They had got into the room. Absolutely. A classic. They got us big time. So that was one of the experiences with the Scottish amateur side. Prior to that, not a lot of people know this, I was asked to go to the Rangers. Now, Harry Davis was, as I say, the coach, and one day after training, he said, look, I want a word with you, thinking I'm in trouble, hadn't been playing well, or whatever it might be. And he said, Rangers would like to sign you. And of course, I went, dearie me, you know, oh, Harry, you know, what do I say here? He said, well, you've got to be very careful in as much you can't really disclose to the press, or you don't answer questions about going professional. Rangers have got to keep it quiet, you've got to keep it quiet simply because you're amateur. So he said the only person really could go to Ibrox and speak to Scott Simon and the fellow directors at Ibrox was my dad. And I said, well, Dad, will you go? And of course he said yes. He said, but at the end of the day, it's your decision. I'll come back and tell you exactly what they're saying. So he went and he came back and he said this and said that and whatever, and I mulled about it. I thought, oh, I don't know, my head's mixed up. So there were other wee clubs in the background as well, I might say, that showed a bit of interest. And I remember vividly, honestly, this was a Monday evening and it was second half and it was at the Rangers end at Hampden. And we were playing Morton, and I don't know, I just looked up and I saw in the director's box all the Rangers people. And I went, you're not going, Biggie? I'm not going. So I went into the dressing room, and of course Harry was there, and he said, well, did you see them up the stairs? And I said, yeah. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm not going, Harry. And he couldn't believe it. And I said, nah, made up my mind, that's it. So he was disappointed, and he was wanted to go up to the people at Rangers and see that Big John wasn't going to join the Glasgow Rangers. Now, very few people know this story, but that's the case. However, as I said earlier, there were other clubs in the background, one of whom were in the Championship down in London, and they had shown interest in me, and I thought I would pursue that particular option. But again, having been in a position before, I knew that I couldn't say anything, and I had to play for Queen's Park the Saturday against Alloa, and dislocated my shoulder with about 2 minutes to go, severed the ligaments, never played for 18 months. So that really was a huge blow. And sometimes even now, I wonder what might have happened if I went down to London. However, it was another 2 years or so I stayed at Queen's Park. One of the highlights at the latter end of my time at Queen's Park was going to Japan. I went with a club called Middlesex Wanderers, who are similar to the British Lions in rugby. Amateurs from Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, and we all went to Japan for 3 weeks. Hadn't met these players apart from the two colleagues of mine at Queen's Park, Tommy Barr and John McLaughlin, and we met our teammates at Heathrow in London and flew to Japan and spent 3 weeks there, played 7 games all over the country. Akita was right at the north. No other sporting team, never mind football team, had visited that particular area. And I had great memories, went to Hiroshima, Mount Fuji, Tokyo, the Bullet Express. It was just unbelievable. And great times, absolutely fantastic times there. It was amazing, Queen's Park. And I still keep in touch with them. In fact, in 2017, Queen's Park celebrated their 150th anniversary. And I was lucky enough to play in the 100th in 1967. And 67, that's correct. So I was asked to go in 2017 to the Glasgow City Chambers. And there was a dinner, and it was absolutely amazing. And you've always got an ambition, a hero, a legend that you want to be in the company of and just stand there or sit there and listen. Well, I got that opportunity because a guest of honour that night was Sir Alec Ferguson. Now, it was an honour, privilege to listen, see, meet, and that was really, really one of the best experiences I have had. And do you know this? He did play for Queen's Park, and the first game he played for Queen's Park against was Stranraer at Stair Park. So that's about that side of the Queen's Park and the history and the background and the stories. I'll speak to you soon.
After a brief spell at Dumbarton, you decided to move to Schnorr. Why did you decide to move to the club?
Yeah, I had a very brief spell at Dumbarton. I wouldn't say it was the happiest time of my career, but nice people, nice players, friendly players. Didn't play as well as I should have. It was a big step, playing against the big teams, the Rangers, Celtic, Aberdeen, Hibs, blah, blah, blah. Let myself down more often than not. But good memories. Good memories at Parkhead. One particular game there was against Celtic, obviously, and they had to, I believe, win this particular game against Dumbarton to win the league. I was lucky enough to play. I remember Alec Wright, he was the manager, and he didn't announce the team until we were on the team bus travelling to Parkhead. And I was sitting beside the other goalkeeper, Laurie Williams, and we were looking out the window, and there, of course, all the fans, green and white, scarves, whatever, mobbed, and Alec got his own, all his up to the back of the bus, rather, and he said, "Taylor, number 1. And I went, oh, here we go. So we got there to Parkhead. I was as nervous as can be. I've never felt anything like it until I touched the ball. Once you get out there, and any goalkeeper will tell you this, once you get out, once you have a touch, no matter whether there's 200 or 2,000, in this case 40,000, you just are focused on the particular game. Played all right. Playing against some of the stars, the legends of football in those years. And the scoreline, Celtic 3, Dumbarton 3. What?
You played over 228 games for the club. Did you enjoy your time at it?
Absolutely, yeah. I spent 20 years at Stranraer with a couple of short breaks. Vast majority of the time, I can remember as being happy. Met a lot of what I call now friends from Stranraer, and still come down on a fairly regular basis to see them all. Started off when I left Dumbarton. A truly great footballer was the manager of Stranraer. His name was Eric Caldo, and he was the Rangers left back and the Scottish left back captain of the Scottish team. And unfortunately, he injured his leg. He broke his leg playing for Scotland at Wembley in a fierce tackle from a Spurs player called Bobby Smith. So first of all, to meet Eric Caldo and see how much I respected him as a person and as a manager, I didn't have any doubts at all that I was making the wrong decision. I played for Stranraer with Eric the manager. Unfortunately, he left, and John Hughes came and was the manager for a year or so. Ex-Celtic, played or was in the squad for the European Cup final in Lisbon, and John left. And then probably the happiest period of my entire football career was spent at Stranraer after John Hughes left. This wasn't a personal attack or whatever, or opinion against John Hughes. It was just the fact that the committee, believe it or not, were responsible for picking the team. This might sound odd now that we have managers, assistant managers, medical directors, all sorts of things, but this was a Stranraer committee, and a lad called John Heap was given the opportunity to become the go-between the dressing room, i.e. the players, and the committee. And he did a fantastic liaison job between the two parties. We had a great time. We had a great bunch of players, and I know everybody will be interested to hear my thoughts, having played with Derek Fry and Jim McCabe. I can't honestly say I've played with two better strikers. Now, nowadays, I don't think they would fit in to the demands of professional footballer. Derek, first of all, wasn't the most mobile of players. He openly admits it. But his counter answer to that criticism, or possible criticism was the fact you give me the ball and I've got a chance to score, I'll score. And he did, with monotonous regularity. He was a character, he was confident, he always believed that he would go out in the park. No fears, nobody would try, plenty of people rather would try and stop him from scoring, but found it very difficult to stop the goal machine. And his partner was KB. KB was the most laid-back character you could ever meet. He didn't look like a footballer. I remember his long, straggly hair. Didn't particularly like training. He hated training. Let's be honest about it. It was a chore, a necessary evil. But give him a ball, put a ball at his feet, and he just produced magical skills. Mesmerised so many defenders that he was just an amazing person and an amazing player. And between the two of them, their attributes, the skills, they were unbelievable when it came to watching them. And in those days, largely because of Brian McCabe, we had lots and lots of spectators, over 1,000, 1,200, coming to Stair Park and all over the country to watch the team. Great players. One player I would like to mention, and I do remember, and older people will hopefully agree, there was an unsung hero in that team. He didn't get the credit he deserved from Stranraer supporters. From a player's point of view, he was vital. He did all the dirty work. He covered, he tracked back, he tackled, and he gave the assurance that if somebody took a decision to go forward, he would always tuck in and provide the cover for him. His name was Ian Steen. Now, I haven't seen Ian for many, many years, but I do remember that, like the rest of the lads, we wished that he was given a wee bit more credit for the success of that particular team. So the committee, when John Heap, it was then decided that another manager would come in. And if I remember correctly, it was Neil Hood. Neil grew up in Ayr. I was a pal of his and still am to this day. And he came in as player manager. I believe I've got my facts right here, but I'm sure people will let me know if I've missed out a manager or whatever. But Neil was a character again. He'd played for Ayr United, the super sub, and he went to Hamilton. He was a legend at Clyde. And he was a player manager, and he and I and a lot of the other lads were coming towards the end of our careers, and it finally ended up at Shawfield when both he and I left the club. Quick story about Shawfield in that particular last game of mine. I knew that it was my last game, and I, to be honest with you, wasn't thinking I was going to play. I knew I was going to be there for my last match. But I was given a lift by Craig Brown, ex-Scotland manager, from Ayr to Shawfield with a lad you'll probably remember, Hugh Hay. And we went up to Shawfield, and I saw Craig and Neil talking away, and obviously they had a conversation about team selection and all sorts of things, no secrets, blah, blah, blah. And Craig came over and says, right, Biggin, let's go, I'll take you into the kind of tea room and we'll have a wee sandwich. You haven't had your lunch. And of course I went in there, coffee, tea, sandwiches, lovely homemade scones, blah, blah, took the lot. He knew, but I didn't know that I was playing. So I went into the dressing room. Now, I'll tell you this, Clyde had to win, either to get promoted or to go into a particular playoff or something, but it was a vitally important game for Clyde, and Craig being Craig, the wily old so-and-so, he knew that I was playing, so he fed me up with all the scones and buns and ice cream, you name it, had it, and we played, and we ended up, I think it was one each or something, and the last laugh was obviously in Craig, and he came back to me after the game, he said, I knew you were playing, Biggin. I said, I now know. So Craig, tremendous character, still see him on a regular occasion, and a lot of time and respect for him, not only as a player, as a manager, but as a person. So after I left, when I say after I left, once I stopped playing, I was lucky enough to be asked back by Davy Snedden, a wonderful gentleman, probably too nice to be a manager. And he popped into the club as the manager, and I was helping him with regard to the goalkeeping. Boyd Strachan was the first goalkeeper I was lucky enough to coach. And after that, there was Davy Snedden, there was Nobby Clark, there was John Clark, ex-Celtic. He came and I was helping him. And for a brief spell, I helped Sani. But then it changed again for the better. As far as I was concerned, Sani left the club, and an ex-goalkeeper, Campbell Money, was given a job as Stranraer manager. From sitting in the dugout, that was certainly the high point of my career at Stranraer. Seeing Campbell work, being an ex-goalkeeper like me, I found it extremely interesting the way that he could become a football manager and not a goalkeeping coach or a goalkeeper. Highlight obviously was winning the Challenge Cup. My old pal Barney produced miracles, and that day will remain with me for the rest of my life. Not so much the game itself, but the celebrations after it at Broadwood were absolutely amazing. And of course, some of it came down to Stranraer, and the welcome from everybody within the club was absolutely amazing. I have great memories there. I think it will never leave me. And of course, now I always look for Stranraer, and hopefully they'll continue going up the league as they're doing at the minute.
You famously lifted the Soccer Six trophy in Irvine. What a great memory.
Yeah, the 60s, Ryan, that brings back long memories. In fact, there were two occasions we won the tournaments. One was in the Magnum in Irvine, where we managed to win that particular competition. That wasn't the biggest one. We beat Kilmarnock, by the way, in the final of that particular one. But the Kelvin Hall was the national one. The Kelvin Hall was held, and I think the photographs that appear for the 175th anniversary, I think it is, 150th. It's the one at the Kelvin Hall, which Neil Hood was the manager. He didn't play, but Hugh Hay, Tam Filson, Mike Neal, Drew Harvey, they were part of that particular team. And we beat several clubs before getting into the final and beating St Mirren. It was mobbed. I mean, at the Kelvin Hall in those days, probably 2,500 people crammed into the arena. And of course, the big boys, the Rangers and Celtics and whoever, they had strong teams out and were favourites, rightly so, to win the actual tournament. But we just managed to get through. We played well, and we rose to the occasion, and eventually we were crowned champions. And that was really the start of the Tennant Sixes, which, as you all know, grew to a national tournament and televised live. But that was the start, and fortunately Stranraer were lucky enough. Not lucky enough, we deserved it, but we were privileged to win that particular six-a-side tournament.
After you hung up the gloves, you had a career in the media. Is this something you planned?
The next stage in my career, as far as sport was concerned, was when I left Stranraer Football Club. I had no idea as to what I was going to do. But prior to leaving, I remember Stranraer, we were drawn against Motherwell. I think it was a quarter-final of the Scottish Cup down at Stair Park. And I was interviewed by West Sound prior to that game to get my thoughts and try to encourage the locals to come and support the boys. And that was my first introduction to the media. Something must have been said, or something I did was accepted, and out of the blue I got a phone call from Ian Ferguson, who is an ex-Daily Record chief reporter, and he was presenting what they call a Super Scoreboard, and this was a local sports programme from Ayr, 5 minutes from my home, and he asked if I would be happy and willing to come into the studio. It was live. I honestly can say it was live. There was no delays or anything like that, and it lasted from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Now, honestly, the time just flew in. You think 4 hours, it's a long, long time. It is. But it's amazing when it's live and you're getting all the up to date, the pre-match, and then from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, which was my favourite time, with the scores coming in from the Sky Sports, and updating the listeners with all the scores, the scorers, the league positions. And that was a wonderful, in fact it was 6 years, Ryan, that I stayed with West Sound, and a big part was the juniors. A lot of people in the Ayrshire area were keen in the juniors. We got the South of Scotland League. Not trying to be biased, I managed to get a fair amount of coverage for Stranraer. And in that time, there was a kind of episode with the demise of Stranraer Football Club. And at no time, and I must make this quite clear because people perhaps get the wrong end of the stick, at no time I was trying to say anything or do anything which would prevent Stranraer Football Club from carrying on and growing and whatever. All I was trying was to get as many interested parties, old and new, to work together so that the club would survive and grow. So if there was any misunderstanding, let me make it clear, there was no way, no intention of saying or doing anything to the detriment of my favourite football club. Why should I? I managed to help to a certain extent because a number of people contacted West Sound to see if I could do anything about it. And although I wasn't involved directly with the club, I managed to speak to a number of relevant people to try and influence, in particular, the financial segment of industry, i.e. the bank. And we managed to, through Alec Thompson, who was amazing in the way that he helped, mostly in the background, what eventually happened with the club. So we managed to speak to the right people within the head office of the bank, and the rest is history. A lot of cuts had to be made, a lot of decisions were taken, and but the big picture is our wish was to keep the club afloat, and I'm so pleased and proud that they are, and this season doing well, and certainly it looks as if, although I'm not involved at all, that the ship has been steadied and things are moving in the right direction. So within the West Sound, it was amazing to work with so many pundits, sitting beside the Jim McSherrys, the Campbell Moneys, Gordon Dalziel, he was in for about 2 years on and off. Hugh Burns, ex-Rangers, and various other clubs. He joined me for a season or so. Lots of people like John Redmond and the juniors, he was there. We interviewed and had people in the studio as guests from Stevie Nicol, ex-Ayr United, Liverpool and Scotland. Brooks Milson from Gretna, he came in. And I remember I was a bit apprehensive as to what he would be like. And he was amazing, because I said to him prior to the interview, I said, well, what do you want to discuss? What do you want me to ask? He said, anything. I said, anything? He said, I'll answer as honestly and upfront as I possibly can. And he did. So I really had a lot of time and respect for him. So there were so many stories, I could go on and on about them, but that was a wonderful time. And unfortunately, it came to an end purely in a financial decision. And Still, people come up to me in the street and say, look, we missed West Sound, the patter was good. We had no idea what we were going to talk about, and we fell out, and there was no pre-arranged this or pre-arranged that. We just went for it. And as I said earlier on, the 4 hours just passed so quickly. So that came to an end, which was disappointing, and didn't leave the media side, because I joined up with Hugh Burns at a radio station called Rock Sport, which was a mixture of rock music and sport. And that again was Saturday afternoon, predominantly the Glasgow and central belt of Scotland. I had an old pal of mine, still an old pal of mine, John Brodie. He and I worked closely together. We went to games, and we discussed things in the studio, although he and other reporters were out at various games. So I was in the studio with Hugh Burns and John Redmond, and that was a good innings. So that ended, and that really ended the media side, which I'm sad about, because I really did enjoy it. However, as they say, all good things must come to an end.
Are you still involved in the game?
Well, when the media finished, that was it. I've got no involvement with any particular club. 2 out of the 3 senior clubs that I played with, I still keep in touch with, obviously Stranraer and my friends up at Hampden at Queen's Park. I'm a member up there, and what they call, it's called the Queen's Parkers, and every 2 or 3 months or so, a lot of the ex-players and officials meet up at Lesser Hampden for a blether, and we watch the first team game at Hampden, and all we do, rightly so, is reminisce. And we've obviously the last 2 or 3 years been talking big time about Queen's Park and the step that they've taken into professional football. Being a bit of a traditionalist, it was a heart and head. The heart said no to turn, but the head said yes if you want to survive, because of the other clubs who've got a fair amount of financial clout trying to take the place of Queen's Park. And it could be the case that Queen's Park would certainly drop out of the senior division and perhaps disappear. So they're now professional, they're now full-time, and of course in the next 6 months or so they start playing their games at Lesser Hampden, and that's it, completely gone from my favourite park, which is Hampden Park.
Who's the best player you've played against so much?
Ryan, I've had the pleasure of playing against so many great players, from the Rangers, Celtic. I've got to pick a player from either of those teams, simply because they are the biggest clubs, and they have, rightly so, the biggest and best players because of the financial situation. So who would I pick? Well, I played against John Greig. What can you say about him? He's a Rangers legend. I think he's been voted the best Rangers player ever. Davy Wilson, I've mentioned him before. Jim Baxter. Played against all these people. Celtic, yeah, Jimmy Johnson, Bobby Lennox, Ronnie Simpson. But there is one that sticks out for me, because he not only managed to be successful in Scotland and with the Scottish national side, he made it big time in England. Kenny Dalglish. I had the privilege, and it was a privilege to play against him on a few occasions, and he just had everything. I mean, people have talked about Kenny for over the years, and I can't add any more to it. He was just absolutely fantastic. And the reason I've really picked him is not only did he do it in Scotland, he did it in England, and he won the respect from everybody in England, although he was Scottish. And that says a lot, that he could manage to do that and get into a situation where Liverpool were one of the strongest teams, certainly in Europe. And most of it was down to Kenny Dalglish. So yes, he is my favourite player that I've played against.
What's the best 1 to 11 players you've played with?
Right, here we go. 4-4-2. Starting obviously with a goalkeeper. Can't be me. A lot of people are quite relieved to hear that. Anyway, no, seriously, Bobby Clark is a goalkeeper that is the best goalkeeper I've seen. and I've been involved in. I've trained with him. I was understudy to him at Queen's Park. As we all know, he eventually went up to Aberdeen as a professional with Eddie Turnbull. Gained many caps for Scotland, and he had everything as a goalkeeper. Obviously the basics, the shot stopping ability. Staying in his line when it was best for him, and opposite to that, obviously coming when it was the right option for him to do. He narrowed his angles really well, and he was vocal. So all in all, an all-round good goalkeeper. And I've got to say, an all-round good guy. Still keep in touch with Bobby, and he's now living in America. 4-4-2, as I say, the right full-back is a guy called Tommy Barr. A lot of people probably won't remember Tommy, but he was the first of the overlapping fullbacks. The new Andy Robertson, or the old Andy Robertson, is rather. The Keith Knox was in the same mould, but Tommy just played on. Very, very occasionally had a bad game, and he always was fit. He never missed many games over many seasons at Hampden. I travelled with him, I toured with him, and off the park, an excellent teammate. The right side of the central defenders, you've got two Stranraer players. One is John Muir, big plug. He was a character, he was a winner. Off the park, we were the best of pals. On the park, maybe not as pal as we were off the park. But we tried to encourage each other. We used to shout and bawl at each other, but really respected John, certainly because of the ability in the air in particular. Although after saying all that, he really was quite skillful on the ground. But he had this ability, and very few people had this, was to jump for a ball, and for a split 4 or 5 seconds, he would stay there, he would hang. And by that time, the ball had arrived, and he was there to perfectly time the ball and clear it. So that was his big not issue, but that was a big thing he had, ability. And he needed somebody to maybe run for him. The legs were going a wee bit. He was never really the fastest of central defenders. There are not many in those days were. But the other guy that made him, and what a partnership, is Ala McCutcheon. Ala, local Stranraer lad. He had a tremendous eye for a ball. He had the brain to know where to go and what John Muir was doing and what he wasn't doing, and he was filling in, and he was, if there was a quick decision to be made, Ala was always there. He was bright, and he was fast for 5-10 yards. It was amazing. And he complimented John, and that's what you needed in those days, certainly. You needed the centre halves to be in a position where they were comfortable with each other. So Ala and big plug, John Muir. Left full back, I'm cheating a wee bit. I never played a competitive game with him, but I did in the training park. I watched him, played with him. He was Eric Caldo. What a wonderful player. What a wonderful player. He played for Rangers, captain Rangers, and as I said earlier, he captained Scotland. And because of a broken leg, he didn't have the length of time that he should have had to display his abilities. Middle four, Malky Mackay was a character. Malky Mackay, Queen's Park, through and through. He's been there for years. His son also played, Malky Jr. used to play for Queen's Park as well. He's just resigned or left the SFA as a performance director. He was the manager of Cardiff and Norwich and Watford, etc., etc. But his father, Malky, and I played together, and if the crowd didn't know what he was going to do, his teammates certainly didn't know what to do, because, to be honest, he didn't know what he was going to do. And that was the beauty of Malky. He was so unpredictable. We had to lean on him to say, look, at some point between the first and the last minute, do something spectacular, score the winning goal or whatever. And the number of times he did that, it was just uncanny. So yes, he goes into that team of mine. And in the middle two positions in the four, you've got a lad I played for a season with at Dumbarton, and he was part of the Celtic team that won the European Cup, and he is Willie Wallace Wispy. Brilliant guy, happy to talk about the experiences of playing at the high level that he did reach. I was in awe of him when I was sat next to him in the dressing room, and when he started telling the stories, you know, you could just sit there and listen to him all day. But that's only one side of Willie. What a player. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He had a great eye for a ball again. He had the skill. He was coming towards the end of his career, but you saw that he had some ability, and to get to the Celtic level of winning the European Cup and many Scottish caps, especially the famous one against England the year after they won the World Cup. So Willie Wallace, he's my man for the centre of midfield. And going alongside him is somebody that a lot of people might not remember. I certainly went to school with him at Newton Park Primary. I played football with him at Ayr Albion Boys Club. We went our separate ways. He joined Ayr United, and his name is Dougie Mitchell. Now, Dougie Mitchell, if he was playing today, would be the number 10. He had everything. He had the tackling ability. He was strong as an ox. If there was a 50-50 ball, Dougie was getting it. But he had skill. He could look up, visualise what was happening. And to be honest with you, he was a big part of the Ayr United team under Ali MacLeod, and maybe went under the radar a bit. But football players depended on somebody like that, and you could depend on Dougie. Wide left, Davy Wilson, Rangers, Dundee United, Dumbarton. Played with Davy at Dumbarton. Again, got into the Rangers first team, got into the Scotland team, and a marvellous player. He was so fast, first 5-10 yards, poof, he was away. But again, he was just nearing the end of his career, and perhaps I didn't see the best of him. Now, what I saw, and if that was not the best, he must have been some player when he was at his best. So that's the middle four. Front two, have a guess. Yeah, Fry McCabe. I had the privilege to play with Derek and Jim, and it's only a shame that younger people have not been able to watch footage of Derek and Jim McCabe. You would have been really impressed. If they were playing today, then they would probably have to change in as much as the fitness, the time and effort that they put in the gym and all this sort of thing. But back in those days, they didn't need to do that. They had undoubted skill, which everybody's got to have, the natural ability of the two of them. They complemented each other. If one was having a kind of quieter day, be sure that the other one would take the place. And when they got together as a partnership up front, the defence, to be honest with you, they were really struggling because they couldn't cope. And I do remember a goal which will stick out in a number of people's memory about Jim. He got the ball actually in his own half, and I think it was against Falkirk, and he got the ball in our own half, and he started to weave this magical wand of his past 1, 2, 3, 4 players, and eventually it was 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper. I think it was Ernie McGarr, the old goalkeeper who played for Falkirk at that time, and he rolled the ball past him and just put it into the back of the net. And of course at full time rather, we were saying, why didn't you get down on your hands and knees and just kind of head it in? And he said he really was nearly going to do that, but thought the best of it because he didn't want it to make a fool of Ernie. Now, it was a remarkable goal. Derek Fry, he could score from any angle. Power, pace, timing. But they were great people, great lads, and it was a privilege for me to play alongside them and watch their skills. And between the two of them, they certainly made a huge difference for Stranraer in that particular year.
Have you any funny football stories?
Stories by Jingo. Yeah, I've got hundreds and hundreds of stories. To be honest, they're all true. So what I thought I'd do, I would give you one story for each of the senior teams I played for. So there's one for Queen's Park, one for Dumbarton and one for Stranraer. The Queen's Park one is absolutely true. Years and years ago, when I was playing for Queen's Park, buses in those days were not as efficient. And with all the mechanics of modern day buses, there were no loos, for example, no seat belts. So that's a picture set in as much that we had to travel by bus in Nigeria, constantly going from one town to another. And we were advised by the medical people, obviously, not to become dehydrated. So we had to drink plenty of liquids. So obviously, if you were travelling a long distance in the bus, you had to take water and whatever. And nature being nature, if you drink a lot, you've got to sometimes go to the loo. And this was the case with maybe half a dozen of us one day in the bus. And it was the days of the initial video cameras. And we asked Harry Davis if we could be allowed to go out the bus. And he said, yeah, absolutely, no problem, lads. Go to the back of the bus, do what you've got to do, and then back on. And away we go again. So Peter Buchanan in those days was the Jack the Lad, and he had this video camera. We didn't know this. So we went out right behind the bus and doing what we had to do. And Harry said to the driver, move on. So the driver started to drive the bus forward. And there we were standing there, as you can imagine, doing what we had to do. It was unbelievably funny. We saw the video when we came back. We had a night out at Hampden. And to see us lot just hanging there, it was a classic, and I'll never ever forget that. Great one. Going to Dumbarton, yes, I said earlier on that probably not the happiest days. However, there were laughs, and I got one back on Ayr United supporters. Tell you what happened. In those days, the League Cup was in sections. There were sections of 4 teams, and then if you won, you went on to the next stage of the League Cup. We in Dumbarton were drawn against Hibs, Morton and Ayr United. And the first fixture was against my hometown team, Ayr. Now, obviously, a lot of people round about the area knew that I had just signed for Dumbarton, knew that this was going to be my first game, so they obviously gave me pelters, and they did. However, didn't play too badly, although we lost 2-0. And if you take it to the very end of the sections, we obviously had to play Ayr at Boghead. Boghead was aptly named. It was a quagmire, it was unbelievably heavy. But the situation arose that if we won, we would go through to play Rangers in the quarter-final at Ibrox. So the incentive was there, as it was for Ayr United, I might add. And again, on the Wednesday night, there were busloads of people coming up from Ayr to support their team and give me pelters. So we were given this incentive, and it's a lot of money in those days, £100 to beat Ayr United. And the game went on and on, no real action until the last 5 minutes when Brian Heron, our left winger, scored a cracking goal to put us in the lead 1-0. And of course, that was it. It was time for the Ayr United support to get nasty, to get vocal, and give me more pelters if that was possible. However, Ayr got a corner kick with about 30 seconds or so to go. And the ball came over and it rebounded from one player to another. Then somebody hit it. And to be honest with you, I'll tell you the truth, it hit me there and it went over the bar. What an absolutely save. So I milked it because I went with my thumb. Oh dear, and I'm on the ground, writhing in agony. Trainers are, you all right, Big? Oh, my thumb, I think I've dislocated it, boys. Oh, geez, oh, whatever. So anyway, calmed down, whatever, and got up. Ball was cleared. Referee blew full time. We go through. So we went into the dressing room obviously the United supporters are still giving me pelters for the save. What a marvellous save, Biggie, you lucky big so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Then to the dressing room, and Willie Wallace, we're talking about Willie, he was next to me, he said, well played lads, Biggie, oh God. I'll tell you though, some save, wasn't it? I said, oh, my thumb's no bad. He said, your thumb? It was never near your thumb. I saw you, I was standing right in front of you, and it hit your head, went over the bar. He said, your secret's safe. So nobody in Ayr United and any of those supporters over there knew that it hit my head, went over the bar, and there was nothing wrong with that thumb. Great story, true story. Stranraer, earlier on, when I started there, as I've said many times, this interview, that Eric Caldo was the manager. And this true story started off when we were at the training before the game on the Saturday, and the boss said, right lads, I'll not be able to make it on Saturday. I've got a wedding to go with my wife to Durham. My assistant, Willie McKinley, he'll take the team, all the best, blah, blah, blah. So he goes away, and we go down on the bus, and we get into Stranraer, into the dressing room, and Willie McKinley said, right lads, sit down. So we sat down, and then he put his hand in his pocket, and he brought out this, as it happened, a tape recorder. True, a tape recorder. And he pressed it. Right lads, this is the boss here. Sorry, as I said the other night there, I'll not be with you. Big game today, Willie's in charge, so listen, do what you're told by him, and I'll be getting updates throughout the game. So the team is, and he went through the team, Taylor, Hay, Hopkins, Heat, blah, blah, blah. To the last player was our left winger at that time, was a guy called Alec Barrowman. Remember that name? So he started again, we've got to do it this way, play that way in the first half, or whatever it might be. And then he done, and in this tape recorder, I'll never forget it, he said, I'm sure he said, and if things are not going well, Barra, you're coming off. And Barra looked at him and said, I might have scored a hat-trick, I might be having a cracking game. And Willie McKinley said, you'll still be coming off. So it was, the story probably is growing arms and legs, but that's the basic of it. It was just one of those days, and in fact we did win, and Barra did not have to come off. So there you are, that's the story about Stranraer.
Thanks, Sean, for this week's interview. I really appreciate it. Your stories was really good, and I heard that you are a really good goalkeeper. And when you're back down at Stair Park, hopefully we can get you into the commentary with my dad, Lawrence, and Brian. And everyone, remember to like, subscribe and share, and hit the bell symbol so you never miss a brand new video. And I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!